What's up, Tweeners? Welcome back to another Tweener tennis video today here on the channel. And today we have another chat with David Kane, our very own WTA tennis insider who writes for tennis.com and is a friend of the channel. And he is our go-to guy to finding out what is going on the WTA tour. But before you guys enjoy this chat with David, make sure you are subscribed to Tweener Head Tennis. We're trying to hit 6,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on and leave a comment down below of what you think is going on the WTA tour. Without further ado, enjoy our chat with David Kane for your WTA tennis update. Welcome back, David. That's all I have to say. After being sick for virtually 2 months and now back on the channel after the Australian Open and him having one of the weirdest schedules I've ever heard of. David, welcome back to the channel.
Quite a cold open, Phil. Yes, it's true.
You're welcome.
I've been sick for like 2 out of the last 3 months, but I'm finally back on the podcast circuit. I guessed it on the Gay Tennis Podcast last week, but I suppose any podcast that I'm on is the Gay Tennis Podcast. So I suppose this is the gayer. I made this.
No, it's not. It's Jesus Christ. See, it's like we haven't missed a beat. It's always great having David on.
Still missed me.
Always. It's always.
His New Year's resolution was to have me on more.
No, the New Year's resolution was to not be verbally abused by you for 90 minutes. So that was great.
I'll settle for making you blush then.
Okay, can we start over?
He's already pink, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, David. Where do we start? Let's just start with the biggest 2025 headline. Madison Keys, 29 years old, winning her first Grand Slam. And after making, what was it, 10, I want to say 10 years ago, but I don't think it was 10 years ago. What was it, 2017 with Sloane?
Oh, the final was she made her first Slam final in 2017. She made her first Slam semifinal 10 years ago at 19 at the Australian Open, lost to Serena.
Jesus Christ. Like, Madison's been around for a while, and it has always been in the conversation of American women's tennis of hitting that pinnacle of like, who's going to replace Serena? Who's going to replace Venus? But like, Madison was always on that next train of American talent before Coco Gauff, before Pegula. And honestly, she deserves it.
I mean, to put it in perspective, Madison Keys won her first WTA match when I believe Coco was 5. And they're not that much. They're not that far
it's not that
age.
big. What is it? Coco just turned 21?
Yeah. Or she will next month.
Next month, she's turning 21, and Madison is turning 30. I'm turning 30 this year
but
as well.
It feels
The longevity of women's tennis, I feel like a lot of people don't understand, is like you start playing at 14, 15, and then you end up still playing. Like 10 years into the tour is when you're 25. Think about that. It's like you're hitting your peak of like young, not even young adulthood, but it's like you've already amassed a giant career before you even hit like your late 20s. So for her to be there, it's another level.
No, I was going to say, I just remember poor Casper Ruud talking about that a few years ago at the US Open, feeling like he was middle-aged at 22, 23. And
that's what's crazy. But that's what's crazy. That's what tennis does to you. Like in all of sports too, you hit 29, 30-ish, and you're already on the back half of your career in terms of age. So you look at someone like Madison Keys, who literally hasn't given up and wins her first Grand Slam in Australia, says a lot. And I feel like she definitely had a lot of people rooting for her in that sense.
Hasn't given up, but I do think this was probably like the last push, one could say. Like in a world in which this didn't work, I think we would have seen a glide path out of tennis sooner rather than later. I mean, like we said, this is someone who's been on tour for a very long time. This is someone who just got married and seems open to the possibility of starting a family. And so at the age, at the bracket that she's in, financially speaking, I'm sure she's not hurting and would probably be looking forward to that next chapter. And so
as of right now, yes.
Yeah. So in many ways, that's sort of, not to jump too far ahead, but that feels like the question for Maddie is this a springboard or is this a lifetime achievement award? And I think the next 12 months will sort of bear that out. But on the other, I mean, because that seems fairly clear, but on the other hand, like, she did make a lot of improvements and a lot of changes in a short period of time to make this happen. And so you feel like, well, maybe this is someone who is looking ahead, 3 to 5 years. But then again, on the third hand, wasn't it Andy Murray who changed his racket like 2 months before retiring? So you can make a big change and then maybe not plan to be on tour for that long
Well,
either.
it seems like it started with that when Madison switched over to Yonex and they really pushed on that. I'm just surprised, and in all honesty, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the fact that Nike has stayed with Madison Keys and even came out with a campaign with Madison after she won the Australian Open says a lot about how determined they were to keep her on, at least for their athletes, right?
I guess. I mean, she's with IMG. She's in the Max Eisenbud bubble, and
Yeah.
they have a very good relationship with Nike. So that doesn't surprise me that she's one of the ones that have stayed with that brand for a long time. But I feel like in many podcasts over the years, I've been tough on Madison Keys because I feel like this is someone who has immense talent and potential, and maybe thought in the back of her mind that eventually she would win a slam, that maybe she wouldn't have to make the radical changes that maybe other players have been asked to make, and that eventually things would just fall into place. And after a decade and a half of that not happening, I'm glad to see that she did make some substantial changes to the game. She did fix the serve motion. She did change rackets, and you see how that helps that extra, even if it's just 5%. Like this is a game played on margins, and when
Yeah.
you're 5-all or 6-all in the third set and you're going for as much as Maddie's going for, you need the ball to go in at that point. And you need to feel confident to go for the shot and feel confident that it's going to go in. And I think that's what we saw both in the semifinal and the final, that confidence and inner peace
Yeah.
that she could go for her shots and that they were
Mhm.
going to go in.
And I think that comes with too the fact that she talked about being having therapy, and this has been said on other podcasts as well. But the fact that she came out and said that she wasn't just speaking to a sports psychologist, she was speaking about her life. She was speaking to a therapist and understanding what really makes her happy and resolving things off the court that translate onto the court. And that's something very, I would say, brave in terms of mental health, because we're in this generation now where mental health is taking a front seat in an athlete's car, and it's allowing them to kind of talk about what's going on and be honest about what's happening in their lives. And it's great to see that Madison's really opening up about that and being such a happy person and having all of these foundations and charities that she's able to kind of build her brand around. And now that she's kind of finally done that, it's just all come together naturally.
Kindness wins.
It really does. Honestly, it does. Um, the one thing I will say about, if we were to talk about her final, I think it was just the perfect matchup to beat Sabalenka. It was like she out Sabalenka'd her from the baseline.
Yeah, and I think that's why Arena, as angry as she was in the immediate aftermath of the match, the way that she was able to recover for the trophy ceremony and for the post-match press conferences
Hmm.
makes me feel that this is someone who understood that this is someone who just played her game better than she could
Yeah.
that day. And I
Hmm.
think she also is aware that that's not going to happen that often.
Yeah.
First of all, there are only so many players on tour who can hit the ball as hard as Sabalenka, and there are even fewer who can do it as consistently as Sabalenka is proven capable of doing. And for a
Hmm.
while, I think Keys was in the former camp and certainly not in the latter camp. And now the question is again whether she can consistently play that game.
Yeah.
Obviously Sabalenka has a much larger body of work than Keys at this point. I mean, the consistency that Sabalenka has put down at these majors is impressive. I mean, we haven't seen a player go for that much and be that consistent since Serena and Maria. So
Yeah.
maybe a Kvitova, but even a Kvitova has had up and down. So that's it. That's the question.
And I think with that question comes a lot of not concerns, but the fact of the matter that Madison is now top 10 in the world, and she is now going to be asked about her consistency and how, like, for me at least, when you talk about Madison Keys, there's always going to be a little, like, that's great. Will she maintain that throughout the year? Will she be able to do that? Because she's had an unbelievable start in Australia. Now it's going to become, does she have a shot at doing the same thing at Wimbledon? Would she have the same thing at the US Open? And could she have done this at any other major? Because Sabalenka was going for a three-peat. That's a lot of mental pressure. Australia has always been one, at least in the women's game, at least in my mind, where anyone can kind of win. Same with the US Open. And that's just my opinion, because you look at Sophia Kenin winning a major and then, no offense, falling off the face of the earth. Emma Raducanu, like the US Open as well, kind of that theme of does really well, but then what happens next? Am I wrong to presume that?
I mean, I feel like we've seen
You can tell me I'm wrong.
randomish Roland Garros and Wimbledon champions over the
That's
last
true.
I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily think of the Australian Open. I mean, especially the Australian Open, one that, Serena won a bunch of times. Like, I don't know if I necessarily think of that as a place where, I mean, I understand the logic of, like, it's the first big tournament of the season. Maybe there's some rust, then maybe that can lead to some surprising results. I don't really think Maddie's going to be under a ton of pressure this year. I think any pressure that is put on her will be from herself and whatever, like, expectations she now believes that she can and will or wants to achieve. And this is someone who said coming into it that this is, she learned to live without the idea of a major, and which is actually something similar to what I think Marketa Vondrousova had come to from a mental perspective, feeling like, I'm probably never going to win a slam. And then she immediately won a slam. So, like, I remember even saying to her at the US Open, I said, well, now are you picturing like you can never win a second? And then maybe that'll help you win a second slam. So because I feel like like you said, I think there's a ton of goodwill for Keys from fans and from the media, that I don't think there's going to be a lot of, like, finger wagging of, like, now you need to win 2 slams, or can you win a second? I think a lot of it is just going to be this sort of afterglow, because in some ways it's such an easy story. Like, this is a player who we all know from a very young age with all this potential. She's struggled with injuries, inconsistency. She finally, she gets married. She's in a moment of personal happiness. She makes these, technical and equipment changes and has some great success. So I don't know if there's going to be a lot of, like, nitpicking of that story, but I do think when she comes to Wimbledon, she will be one of the players on the shortlist to win that title or make the final. I do think that, especially if she plays well through the hard courts and plays well enough on the clay, which she has in the past. She's made a Roland Garros semifinal, I'm pretty sure. So clay is not off the table for her. And I think she even made a Rome final. So this is her, lack of success on clay is often over exaggerated as well. So this is someone who can play well throughout the year.
True.
And
that's true.
The question is whether she'll do it.
See, this is why I like talking to David, because I'll throw out something very irrational and very fan-based thinking, and he'll correct me saying that this is all wrong and this is what actually happens on the tour. It's true. And going back to what you said too about Vondrousova saying that she can see her career without a slam, Keys saying she came to peace with her career not having a slam. I think, who quoted this? Someone mentioned that the first time Keys heard someone say that she was going to win a Grand Slam was probably when she was 9 or 11. And it's 20 years later and she won her first slam. Like, you have to admit, that's a lot of pressure. Like, for anyone too. Like, think about kids that kids that I teach, like, that are really serious about tennis. They want to win a Grand Slam. They want to be number 1 in the world. Saying that and doing that are 2 very different things. And imagine someone telling you that you're going to win a slam at 9 years old, and then you still having the mental toughness and the ability to still play and win without actually achieving that. That must be some mental toll of, I can't even fathom how much pressure that would be.
Yeah, I think part of why I don't think there's going to be a lot of, like, more pressure now is because a lot of people have been, loud and wrong about Madison Keys for the last 15 years, that she's absolutely going to win a slam. She's absolutely going to win multiple slams. And every time she would win a tournament before Wimbledon or win, Cincinnati, it's, oh my God, here she comes. And it wouldn't bear out. And like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people ended up feeling like maybe they had some egg on their face. And so the fact that she
Yeah.
finally did come good and win her slam,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a moment of like kind of not contrition, but I think it's just going to be that victory lap moment for everybody. Everyone's
Mhm.
gonna be like, well, I always knew you had it in you, and not feel like to turn around and be like, well, now can you win? How many more can you win?
Exactly.
I think there's an understanding that this is someone who is on the back end of her career, who has, is following perhaps in the footsteps of other players who have, won their slam and
Yeah.
exited shortly thereafter. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of, but there is that the exciting thing about Keys is now this is someone who, with the level of power to compete consistently with Arena Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek, and obviously Coco Gauff, but that consistency will be what makes the difference, because I think there was always that understanding that this is someone who could challenge those three players, but tactically, mentally,
Yeah.
physically, she often was at a deficit. And how does she recover mentally and emotionally from this stretch? There
Exactly.
was a lot of talk about her not being able to play in Austin before Indian Wells, and I'm thinking like if she was seriously planning on competing in that tournament and then going to play 4 straight weeks of Indian Wells in Miami, that was like a misguided decision from the beginning. Like take the time off to fully recover, do your training, and come back in Indian Wells in Miami, because that's going to be the first big, that's your homecoming
Yeah.
effectively. And you are going to get a lot of media. I don't think it's going to be judgmental media, but it's going to be a lot of media obligations and requests. And how do you balance that? And then while also playing on a surface that will benefit you
Yeah.
in front of a crowd who's waiting to root for you.
Yeah.
And it'll be the last two big tournaments before Wimbledon that, you can really, put your mark on this season. And so you really want to ease into that one.
And in talking about Austin too, so for those that don't know, she's actually not allowed to compete in Austin because what happened was in Austin is a newer 250 on the WTA tour. Madison Keys agreed to participate in the tournament, which was great because at the time that she announced that she could participate, she was 21 in the world. After her success in Adelaide and winning her Grand Slam in Melbourne, she blasted into the top 10. Is now currently sitting at the live rankings at number 7. What happened was, according to the WTA officials and rules, only one top 10 player in the rankings is allowed to play, let's just say, that low level of a tournament in the field. Since Jessica Pegula has already committed to playing that tournament, Madison Keys technically isn't allowed to play anymore. So she has to skip it, and she will basically just go straight to Indian Wells and play there, right?
I think we all learned a little bit. We all learned a little bit about the ranking cutoff for WTA
Yes.
tournaments. I feel like we all kind of knew that there's a 6-week cutoff for slams, but I don't think
Yeah.
we realized that there's a 4-week cutoff for
Yeah.
WTA tournaments. And so the fact I think that's really what caught people by surprise. The fact that her results in Australia would have any bearing on a tournament less than a month out, and
Yeah.
realizing that because it's 4 weeks, she cannot enter. But I don't know. I would have been surprised if she entered that tournament. If she even if she could have been there, I don't know if she would have gone.
I
Maybe she would
well,
have gone and done like an exhibition or something. I don't know if that's
I
something that you play so soon.
I here's my train of thought. One, I think she was going to get the appearance fee because she was top 30 in the world, and having a name like her come to a tournament like that. Same with Pagula. And this can all be conjecture in this sense too, because she gets an appearance fee, comes to Austin, and say she does end up like she doesn't be top 10. Say she's at 11. She still goes to Australia. I mean, Austin, excuse me. Shows up, pulls out last second, but still does press media and everything in Austin, which we have seen in the past from players that can happen because they are still obligated to partake in whatever is going on the grounds and with them, because they literally have a contractual obligation to do certain things if they are getting an appearance fee. That's what I thought would happen with that kind of announcement. But to say that she can't go at all is kind of, I don't know if that's an outdated rule or if it's just a way. They say it's a way of keeping the field even or balanced.
Yeah,
which is
they don't want players who are ranked too high to be crowding 250 draws. They want to be able to create this, tier system where,
yeah.
you're playing and competing in 250s, you get your ranking high enough to graduate to the 500s,
Yeah.
graduate to that, etc. So, I mean, I understand the logic. It feels like it's such a one in a million situation,
It
and
is.
one cannot help but wonder if that was a bit of a promotional, opportunity for the
Mm.
tournament to be able to say, "Oh, well, we were going to have this player, but she won a slam and she can't." In a
But it
way, it eliminated the question of whether she would or would not. Which
exactly.
maybe made things better
I
for
think
them.
well, if we look at special exemptions that all these players get too sometimes, and then I guess they're really following live rankings now instead of what, like, for me, like, after, I'm surprised it's not based on what your ranking is when you enter, not afterwards.
No, it's 4. Clearly it's 4 weeks for the WTA and 6 weeks for a slam, which does, allow you to, potentially get your ranking up to a point where you could get into that slam main draw.
Yeah.
Usually it's thought of as a positive thing. One doesn't often think of it as a thing that would eliminate them from a tournament that they may or may not want to compete in.
Yes. And I think I just feel bad because I think that would have been such a great field for Austin, and to be at the WTA 250 in a newer tournament too, to kind of have that name recognition and power would be great. But
Although in
if
Texas, their cup runneth over right now. I mean, in Dallas, there's like a sick draw of like all those American guys competing.
the tournament
So
looks good too. I've been
yeah,
talking to people that are there, and the setup as a Giants fan, I hate saying that the Cowboys facility is really nice, but they're saying that this is probably, and from what I've heard from players, they're saying it's some of the best ATP 500s that they've ever been to, like in
wow.
terms of hospitality and show. I need to put it on once we're done with this because I want to see how the layout looks like. Definitely, it's run by the same New York Open people too, so
Oh, okay.
which is
Yeah,
pretty
I mean,
cool.
I know people complained about it, but I enjoyed Fort Worth. I thought it was a very well run
So
WTA
did
finals.
I.
I thought it was.
I was
I
shocked
didn't have
by
a
that.
problem with
I
it.
was shocked by that, and plus, it's like a Texas circuit right now because it's going to be Dallas, Austin, and then Houston
Mm.
for Clay, which I think is wild to think. Like, there's so much going on right there. Why wouldn't you have the WTA finals still in Fort Worth at a big arena? Do you want to
Reasons.
do you want me to say money, or do you want to say money is the reason?
Well, I don't even know if we have to say it, Phil. Let's not be crass on this podcast.
We're
Talk
always
about things
crass
like
on this.
money. You're the one
You
bringing
make
up appearance fees and things like that.
you make me uncomfortable on my own channel.
Oh,
Let's just say that. Um,
it's the
speaking
nicest thing you've
of,
ever said to me.
for those that are listening, you can't tell, but I'm flipping him off. Um,
People don't just watch us. I just assumed it's a visual. Why wouldn't they be tuning in to see our beautiful faces?
well, because I now have, by the way, you can listen to all my interviews now on Your Ball Was Out podcast on all podcast platforms.
It's breaking news.
This is breaking news. I don't talk about it that much because it's still in soft launch form. And I've only promoted it once or twice. So
If I have time between my Housewives podcast, I will definitely give it a listen. I hear good things.
thank you. I appreciate it. It's mostly all our interviews and chats like this. But if you guys want to check it out, please make sure to subscribe to that and check it out on all podcast platforms. Continuing with that Austin theme, Petra Kvitova. Welcome
She's
back to
back.
she's back after having a child.
Yes, Phil.
Okay, I was just confirming. I wasn't 100% sure, so that's why my face looks like this. I went, child? Yes, because she
Yes.
had a child. Um, it's going to be good to have her back. There are
Yeah, I
there's only what? How many lefties can you think of off the top of your head right now besides Leila
um
Fernandez?
Olga Danilovich.
Okay, that's two.
Okay. Mm, um,
Ellen Perez.
okay. Um,
Am
Well,
I
Taylor
wrong?
Townsend. I mean, if we're gonna start naming
Am I
tennis players,
wrong?
and sure,
Am I
Taylor Townsend.
wrong?
I
Okay.
know, but I mean, that was quite a pull. I
Thank
don't.
you. Welcome to,
Um,
welcome to the way my brain works. Doubles players are tennis players. Must
yeah,
point that out.
I've been told. I was reminded of this on the gay tennis podcast. That the women's doubles is not to be missed. I said, oh, I'll have to tune into that one
Sinyakova,
in between.
yes. Vondrusova,
Avandrusova, of course. Oh, how embarrassing. We brought her up earlier.
yes, we did. So that's 5. Taylor Townsend, Leyla Fernandez, Ellen Perez, Olga Danovich, Marketa Vondrusova. Yeah, that's 5.
Sure.
Sure.
We can count them on one hand.
Okay. Give it a 6. What? How exciting is this for WTA tennis?
I mean, look, I don't know if it's like gonna really shake the table in terms of the landscape, but
That was
it's
awesome.
it's well, because listen, I mean, like at the age that she was at and at the point of her career, you felt like that was one where I am retiring to start a family. I was surprised. I was not expecting her to come
Yeah,
back. And I feel like it's right around the time where if she was going to make that decision, she would. Like there are some
that's
players
fair.
who like whether it's, Alina Svitolina or Belinda Bencic, they like their maternity leave was like, I don't know, 6 weeks. Like they like turned right back around and right back on tour. But like when with Kvitova taking the time that she did, you feel like, oh, this is someone who's settling into to family life and well deserved. Someone who is like accomplished
A
so
lot.
much and
Yeah.
went through so much, on the court, off the court, traumatically, like,
Hmm.
bad, it was not an easy road for her. So you
Yeah.
would feel like that was
Her out.
the ending of a story. But at the same time, this is someone who has immense talent. And
Yeah.
if she's fit and she's healthy and she's playing well, she can, upset the proverbial apple cart. It would be so early to say that this is, someone who's coming back necessarily to win slams. It seems like, and she didn't even say that. She said she missed the competitive atmosphere and maybe just being on tour. And so I'm looking forward to seeing her back.
Hmm.
She's great. She's a great interview. She's so nice, so easy to work with. So I'm looking forward to having her back in the fold for sure.
I think she's definitely gonna bring another like it's 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 fun to see players that go away for a little bit and then they come back and then you're reminded of how good they actually were. Right?
Mhm.
Like Svitolina and her run at Australia is another name that I wanted to bring up with you because it seems like Svitolina is finding that form and another giant gear change if we were going to talk about with her. Madison Keys goes from Wilson, who used her almost her entire career, to Yonex, wins a slam. Alina Svitolina used Wilson for most of her career. Now with Diadem, which I don't even know how.
Interesting. Hmm.
Like I did not expect that. That was probably one of the biggest polls that they've ever had. I know
Well, are
Sasha.
they just getting into the racket
Nope.
market?
They've
They've been
been
around.
they've been around with string and gear, but rackets only recently. But they've
Okay.
been for the past couple years they've been producing some really good rackets. But to
Oh,
have a former top 10 player play and use your gear is outstanding.
yeah. Look, I'll say this. That's what really sets the Svitolina comeback apart from really any other comeback. Like this is someone who is so radically different than the player she was before she
Mhm.
left. She's more aggressive. She's taking big risks. She's
Yeah,
being more, not only with her tactics but with her equipment. I mean, that is a massive. This is not the same as Wilson to Yonex. Just that's
yeah.
this
No,
is
it's
not an
true.
established brand where, oh my god, 18 other players on the tour play with this racket, and
Yeah,
clearly there's an established pattern of success with it. Like this is a huge. This is someone who is really looking to innovate and take a big swing. And so I have
literally.
tremendous appreciation for what Svitolina has accomplished since she came back. And she sets the bar for me so high. The thing with Kvitova is that she doesn't have a ton to change. If she could
Yeah.
just be healthy and hit the ball the way she used to, she can be very much a force on tour. Svitolina, there were issues with the game before she left. And so the fact that she came back and came back better, you know, now we compare her to like a Belinda Bencic, perhaps. Like how did Bencic improve and her time off? Like
Exactly.
those are the two that you're looking to compare.
And I think too, when it comes to Svitolina, it not just I like the way you put it. It's aggressive in the way she came out after having her kid and changing her gear and the way she played to become a new player. I feel like this is I'm not going to make a bold claim and say that she's going to win one this year, but this shows that she really wants to push to win that slam. Like this is like it seems like this year she's really determining, okay, I want this so badly by doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I felt more confident in her ability to win a slam when she was still with her former coach, whose name I've forgotten on this podcast
I
before, and
honestly
they're no longer.
I
Oh
don't
my
look at me like that
God.
for that.
Oh, yeah, it's escaped me again, but they're no
That's
longer
okay.
together, so it doesn't matter. She's back with Bettles, who she
Yes.
worked with previously. But like when she was with him and she was healthy before all those injuries, she spent so much of last year injured, which
Yeah.
felt like such a why. Like, we
Was last year her first year back on tour though?
no, she came back in 23 and had a great year, and then came
Holy
back in
shit.
24 and basically played all through 24 injured, and then stopped playing after the U.S. Open. The
Yeah.
U.S. Open was her first tournament since last year's U.S. Open. But even during the clay in Rome, she was like, I have this foot injury, and because of the foot injury, I picked up back. And
Yeah.
it was the compensation injuries. I was like, girl, like take a break. Like this is ridiculous. I mean, the way that she was talking about these injuries was like, you were doing yourself such a disservice because you've come back playing so well that
Yeah.
to play half baked at this point feels like an insult to the sort of, the mission
Yeah.
statement here. But even injured, she played some real, even at that tournament, she almost beat Sabalenka at
Yeah.
a match point on clay. So, I mean, now that she's healthy again, you know, to put her in the slam conversation, I feel like she probably would have had to beat Keys, which
Yeah.
she didn't have like a not, like a non-zero chance of that happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's certainly one of those players in that second tier that you're looking for to make another slam, to be
To push.
competing for slam quarterfinals. Can
Yeah.
she make semifinals? And then if she's in that deep, really see her be tested in this another slam semifinal or final
Yeah.
would be really interesting, because that's the final frontier now. We've
Yeah.
seen the tactical improvements. How much mentally stronger are you? I that win over Swiatek, I'll never forget that, because I never thought
Yeah.
in a million years she would win a match like that.
Yeah.
And she was
And
playing so aggressively in that last game, and you're like, oh my God. Before the
it
parade passes by, Alina Svitolina, oh my God. Taking control of your destiny. Like that was, you
that
don't
was
see it. You
incredible.
don't see it
It's
happen.
incredible.
So many players, what Coco Gauff is trying to do, very
Yeah.
impressive, to try to like really revamp your game. What Sabalenka's done,
Yeah.
revamp the serve, fix the technique, like that is an interesting wrinkle of this generation of players who are making like radical changes, where we saw players previously maybe adjust their fitness, where we have
Yeah.
not seen like tactical changes, and it's really changing the landscape of the game. So,
I
and
feel like
proving
that's
that it
just
can be done.
I feel like that's just overdue in women's tennis in that regard, because it figuring out the best way versus out hitting someone has become such a great way of improving. Like with Barty, like I think it all started with Barty, to be honest. Like the way she changed the way players, at least from a different tactical point of view, like Barty was probably one of the smartest players on tour when she played. Just from her slice, the way she utilized the court, the way she was able to just bring players forward and absolutely obliterate them. Like if every player played like that, I think it would just be a totally different game. But seeing all this revamped technical and tactical ways that these players are now coming back to, I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about Keys, and feeling like this was a player who maybe just thought that eventually she would win a slam, and now we're seeing this slew of players, Keys included, saying that it's not just going to come to me. I'm going to have to
Yeah.
make a change to my
Yeah.
game, and we're seeing it pay off, whether from
Yeah.
Keys to Sabalenka to potentially Gauff and potentially Svitolina. So
And talking about players that need an absolute overhaul, if we talk about Maria Sakkari,
We're still talking about Maria Sakkari in 2025.
But
I mean, she's sweet and I love her and she's fantastic, but I don't know if that, I mean,
like, do
I feel like
we need
it's,
to talk about her, or are we just gonna like go? This is gonna go down as probably one of the biggest implosions
no,
of.
look, let's be honest. This is someone who achieved far more than I think a lot of people ever thought. It's the opposite of Keys, like someone who we never pictured to be. If you gave me Sakkari and Keys and said who has the higher career high ranking, I think people would all say Keys, and it is not. It is Sakkari at number 3, very nearly number 2. Like someone
Yeah.
who really punched above her weight in terms of just being the fittest player on tour and
Hmm.
being so consistent for the time that she was consistent that I don't really fault her for this dip, because
Yeah.
I think the problems with her game persist, which is that I don't think she's a naturally aggressive player,
Yeah.
and it's very hard for her to maintain that level of aggression. She usually does it like
Hmm.
once or twice a year, so
Yeah.
like it's still, we got a long year ahead of us. Like,
Yeah.
she was playing like this coming into last year's Indian Wells. She made the final, so
Yeah.
it's so early to even say anything. But I would not be I would be remiss if I said it would be unfair to totally dump on her, because I don't think that the expectations of her should have ever been that high. To say that she was a disappointment would be to say that this was someone capable of elite level, massively elite level results, and everything that she has achieved is far better than I think anybody expected. So
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But in the sense of she got so high, and then the absence of consistency with she got so close and yet she was so far for
yeah,
her.
because there was a ceiling. There were players ahead of her who were like significantly just better at tennis. Like Iga Swiatek does everything, is just as, in some ways just as fit and just as like fleet of foot, and
Yeah.
has a much heavier game. Sabalenka can hit through her, is a bigger, stronger player than Sakkari. So like,
But it was I don't even think it was that. I felt like it was just more mental than anything for her. Like
well, yeah, I mean,
that was the bigger issue. And I
she
feel
had
like
to
it
be
still
so
is.
mentally tough to be, but it's like chicken or the egg. It's like you have to be so confident to maintain that level of sustained aggression that it's like, well, you're asking someone to be like unnaturally, like this was not like, a step. This is someone who you're
Yeah.
asking them to really redline for long periods of time. And so
Yeah.
it bears out, like I knew it when she played Coco at Indian Wells. Like, she's going to win this match. Like this was like, that was like teed up for her. Like that was her peak match of the year.
Yeah.
She usually, Pliskova, the 2021 US Open, I was like, she's winning this match, like played
Yeah.
amazing, like could
Yeah.
not miss, and then like shows up against Raducanu in the semifinals, doesn't play that well, showed up against Iga and Indian Wells, didn't really show up. So I mean, like, this is, yeah, I don't, she's great, and she will be a great voice and a great, presence in tennis for years to come.
Yeah.
So I don't, this is nothing less than a success story.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing against her too in that sense because she's doing all the right things. She's just looking to find that way to break back in. And if we look at Paula Badoza's, that's what she did in Australia. Like Badoza played, I think, some of the best tennis we've seen her play in 2 years.
Well, I mean, she's certainly building up to this level. I mean,
Yeah.
I was impressed by how clutch she was against Coco
Yeah.
in that quarterfinal. Like that to me, that was the final frontier, was the
Yeah.
mental switch, because Badosa, unlike a Sakkari, is like just like a taller, stronger, more capable of being aggressive player. But in some ways, she does have that same issue where she's not a naturally offensive. I do think there's like not that same. It's not a Sabalenka level
Yeah.
of
Offense.
offense, and so I think
Well,
you're
no one's
asking her
that.
to kind of like step outside of herself a little bit. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I mean, this last year from her is like miraculous. I mean, this is someone who was like 2 minutes away from retiring, like had a seemingly like irreparable back injury, and is like now playing better than ever. Like,
Yeah.
again, more like expectation defying results from player,
Yeah.
like people just really narrative busting
Yeah.
transitions. So I was happy for her. I didn't really think that the semifinal was going to go differently than how it went, but
No.
that was a pretty, you don't look at a Badosa Golf Grand Slam quarterfinal and not think there's going to be like a mental dip from a Badosa. But like
Yeah.
to her credit, she played very strong, continued to like pressure the Goff forehand, which was not good that day. And
Yeah.
that's a problem that Goff will continue to have to deal with, I imagine, for the immediate future. That she will continue to have bad days like this as she continues to work through the adjustments that she needs to make. But
Yeah.
it's that all credit to Badosa for winning that match because
Oh,
that's
100%.
again not something I thought that she necessarily had in her.
Yeah. And I think, and again, David, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Always fun having you here. The one of the biggest questions I posed to David before coming on the channel was, or the show, I should say, was talking about the Arena versus Iga brand and what.
A question that will make no one offended and no one
No,
upset.
and no one upset, but I think I
Only
think I
positive
really
things in the comments.
always. But the one of the things that someone pointed this out earlier, or I was thinking about this, just if we were to compare Arena or Iga to see who can grow the brand of the WTA more, is it just obviously Sabalenka?
Well, I mean, honestly, it feels like a false dichotomy because like I feel like the real answer is Coco. Like this is like the only like obvious star in the
Yeah,
bunch, and she's a Grand Slam champion. She could be. I mean, listen, looking at the way that the points are shaking out over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, my conspiracy theory is that she might really, compete for number one because, Arena's not defending a ton of points. Iga's defending a lot, but
yeah,
Coco's not defending a lot either. So like you
yeah,
wonder if like, if Coco wins like Doha, that's 1,000 points. All of a sudden, she's not that far behind Arena, who then might be, competing with her, as early as the clay court season.
yeah.
But between Arena and Iga, I mean, you do have to give the nod to the more extroverted, uh, social media savvy player,
Yeah.
which would be Arena, the player who is like, a very good TikToker, like remarkably so, and now also has the backing of the Evolve agency, Naomi Osaka's
And
agency.
Stu's. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Stu's, Stuart Dugans. So like that is interesting to see what he can do, what he and they can do for Arena in terms of brands, sponsorships. I did see a headline that was like, even as successful as Arena has been on the court, her off-court endorsements lag behind. I mean, obviously she has a lot of like institutional handicaps because of where she comes from.
Yes, but the brands that she's currently worked with, Whoop did customized bands for her, which that's a sound bite for Instagram. Um, but it Whoop's one that customized her, and Whoop was one that was just for the WTA in general. But now they're really tailoring towards Arena. AP, the watch brand, she's wearing $40,000 watches now all the fucking time. Um, Oakberry was a really cool one that she's been promoting as well, which is fantastic. Nike now coming out with her own logo and customized outfits, which is great to
That I'm
see.
excited about. I want to see more custom kits from Nike with Arena. That would be the real nod of like, this is someone who we believe is the next
About
star
time,
of our game.
which
Yeah.
is
I mean,
about time.
and she wants it. Like I spoke
Yeah,
to her in China last year. Like she wants that custom line, and she's like she has ideas and is interested in fashion. Like reward her. She's won
yeah.
3 slams. She is the number one player in the world. Like bet on her, I guess, for lack
Do
of a
you
better phrase.
do you think they'll bet on her more than Naomi?
Um, mm, well, no. Well, it's like,
It depends. It's
will
very
they
different.
match her energy? I feel like I don't know if they'll bet more on Naomi in the future, but I think they will continue to do what they've been doing for Naomi. I guess.
Well, it's successful. I honestly, the way Naomi's been doing with the Nike brand has been great. I think when she first came out with her line, like I have some of her stuff. I have the Comme des Garçons Naomi shoes. I have the hoodie. Like her brand with Nike is fantastic, but I wonder how loud they would be able to go with Sabalenka, especially with the commercial that just came out for Sabalenka as well with the serves, and that's like a classic Nike commercial that you would have for tennis players. I will say the AI looking generated Fox for Yonex Sinner sucks ass, and I don't care what anyone says. That thing looks like it was generated for a kid's book.
You mean all those explanations of all the symbolism behind that fox like doesn't move you?
The logo looks better than the actual foxes. Like the logo that's on Darren Cahill's and Simone Vagnozzi's hat look better than the actual fox that was on his jumper. Like,
Oh, I see.
you see what I mean? Like the
Yeah, yeah.
JS and like the fox thing on his hat
Sure.
versus the like literal looking fox with a Nike hat on his jumper
Ah. Oh, yes, 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 yes.
versus
Yeah, I mean,
Sabalenka with the tiger laces and the tiger on the shoe, which is pretty sick.
yeah. I mean, I like that. I like this is someone who, and talk about like branding. Like this is someone
Yes.
who's got like signifiers, like, and probably of all of these players, like the clearest signifier, like the tiger. You know, like
Yeah.
it's very much reminiscent of the bull. You know,
Yeah.
with
Rafa.
Rafael Nadal. I
How
kept
can
wanting to
you
say
forget
Naomi.
him? How come you
No,
forget Rafael Nadal already? It's
no,
been
I
a
kept wanting
year.
to
It's
say
been a
Naomi. No, no, no,
year.
no, no, Naomi. I mean, like, I think, look, will they put Arena in like the Sailor Moon like Harajuku kit? I don't think they'll go that big for Arena, but I would like to see some like she was talking about like custom silhouettes, custom like textures and fabrics.
Well,
So
they're
like
gonna need to anyways because it's been 2 years now, and Nike's been only giving her like her own color
yeah,
versus like their own line. And I'm wondering how much longer do you think it's gonna be before she gets her signature like
silhouette.
logo?
Yeah, I mean, like these sorts of things are
Like the
you think
logo
they're like
itself is what's missing for her.
yeah,
Yannick has his.
these sorts of things are
Naomi
sort of
has
planned
hers.
out like a year in advance. You feel like you would think by the US Open, like time might catch up with itself and like they'll
I'm gonna have
debut it
to
ahead
ask.
of,
I'm gonna have to ask some
her.
people for us, David. I'm gonna have
But
to
it's
ask
true.
them.
We're seeing a lot of like redundant silhouettes. Like, I mean, Arena's basically been wearing the same dress for like 3 years. Iga Swiatek's basically wearing the same outfit. Like, and it's so funny because we're coming off of the AO with like what we saw from Destiny Ayava, who famously like
Yeah,
was
that was
Poshmark,
that was
Depop.
sick. That
And
was
you
sick.
think like what an obvious win if you're a fashion house in the sense of like, if from year to year, these kits do not look that different. How much more money would you make by like pushing out like a nostalgia line? Like, oh, look, the 10-year anniversary of this Sharapova outfit, like the 15-year. And I feel like Reebok's done that in the past with like Michael Chang, or like even a few years ago, Nike did a line in tribute to Andre Agassi in
That
2020.
was yeah, 2020, 2019. That was a really fun one. It was like the
Yeah,
90s jean look.
exactly.
Um,
Like you
there's
feel like
stuff
you
that they
almost
can do, but
like
that's
retro would
yeah.
probably be the way to go if you're
I
a fashion house, or go really, because they don't seem to want to take big risks. Might as well lean into nostalgia
the most
because
the most recent thing I've seen for Ega was I actually have a photo of it and she posted it on her story. It's like On's like customizing words on her shoes. Like she's in her own tour or own era, whatever it is,
sure, yes,
because
yes, yes.
she's
I saw that.
obsessed about Taylor Swift. But in terms of their own line for Ega, I will give On a pass because of how new it is. Last year was really the first full year we had all the athletes like with branding, and more athletes are joining this year. So I will give them a pass despite them looking like a fucking lemonade drink. This past year at the Australian Open, everyone hated it.
Yeah, it's just a lack of diversity with the silhouettes that they're trying to make up for with crazy colors. Like
Yeah.
Sherbety, like that Sherbety half color. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just I feel like
No,
a
I
lot of
agree.
these players are starting to wear the same out, and I feel like I'm not used to that. I'm used to like feeling like from quarter to quarter there'd be like some fairly
Something
different
new.
silhouettes happening. Like
Yeah.
players look different from month to month. So like now
Yeah.
it's sort of just like Iga went from wearing basically the same outfit in Asics to now she's wearing the same outfit in On. And it's not an Iga thing because Ben Shelton's been basically wearing the same outfit in On
Yeah.
throughout his tenure. So it's not even
Yeah.
you can't blame on one particular player.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I,
in a
but
world of Taylor Swift's, I guess be a Sabrina Carpenter is probably all the story here.
do you think Beyonce should have won Country Album of the Year?
I'm glad she finally won album of the year because it's about time. But like, if I were to give it to any of her albums, I would have given it to Renaissance. I mean, I got a WhatsApp from our mutual friend Gil Gross, who also thought that Beyonce should have won for Lemonade, and I'm like, well, at least she lost with Lemonade to Adele. Like to lose the
Yeah.
Renaissance album to Harry Styles,
Yeah.
Can you name more than one
Well,
song on that album?
well,
Damn it.
can you name more than one song from Beyonce's country album? And also,
Yes.
how does she beat out Chris Stapleton?
Who? This
Uh,
is this is the divide. This is the gay straight divide happening right now in real time.
the real country artist Chris Stapleton. How the fuck do you beat that?
Could not pick him out of the lineup.
I know you couldn't. It's okay. He's only
Again, I
won.
was rooting for Sabrina Carpenter. I would have loved to see her sweep. I'm glad she won the two. She swept the pop albums. Love her. She's a comedian like me.
Yes, you two are the same person, David.
We're very similar.
Oh Jesus.
We're very
But
Betty Boopish.
if
Boop boop be doop.
yep, that's another. That's I'm literally
We're both
just
short and sweet.
I'm literally this is the only thing I'm putting on Instagram when I go back over this. This is David.
This is the real.
This is how this works. It's just David making beep boop bop boop boop. It's
I
like
just riff.
it's it's yes, you're full of jazz. Good job, David. Yes, Coco seems like the over both of them, but Sabalenka over Iga. That's the consensus
It's
that we have
also a
right
testament
now.
to like I don't know if Ego wants to be the like um the zeitgeist player, you know. I
Why?
think if she wanted to, she could be, but I don't know if she wants. I think Arena definitely wants to be, and
Yeah.
so that also gives a bit of it like maybe her fans, like Iga's fans, would like her to be more, up front and center. But I don't think if as long as Iga doesn't really want to be, I don't know if she would
Well,
be.
let me ask you this: how are people reacting to Iga's failed drug test?
Oh, I don't. I mean, I think everybody pretty much agrees that it was, one of those accidents. I don't know if anyone. I mean, there's
So
been so much
minuscule.
oxygen devoted to the Yonex Sinner situation and especially like to have that as a contrast of like
Yeah.
the way in which like they're not appealing Igas, but they are
Yeah.
appealing
Yonex.
Yonex for with WADA. So like I think that also helps. I mean, it seems like just awful, terrible, bad luck, but also a testament to like you have to be so careful. Like anything you put in your body could potentially,
Well, that's why a lot of
trigger.
people. I think someone. Oh, that's what Raducanu said. She didn't put on like bug spray
Well,
because that's I don't.
I don't know.
Raducanu is another story that we could do a whole podcast on.
That felt like a
Honestly,
tall tale.
that's yes. Honestly, it is. And but it seems like too with Simona Halep playing her first tennis match in I think 2 years at this year's Transylvania Open. That's happening right now.
She played last year, Phil.
Then who's saying that she's the first time she's playing in 2 years? What headline am I reading?
It's
Okay.
definitely
Since
no.
last
She
year. Let's
played
just go since last year.
since last
Um,
year. Yeah.
but she's still like hounding about her own like
Like she's still talking about it. What do you mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would too. Especially if like since it turned out in a positive, like she got to come back. Like she'll always look back and feel like, well, if that's all, if this is how it ended, then why was I, off the tour for even longer?
Yeah.
So
Same with there's a couple other players too. Brooksby,
mm.
Ymir. These are all different cases, but it's like you see that and then Halep still yelling from her soapbox about it. Like
I mean, I think she'd have less to say about it if she was playing better. But as the results don't bear out, have
yep,
what do you?
leave it to David to say that. I won't say that, but David will.
I mean, I think as the results pile up, you feel like you
Mhm.
cannot help but think that if I had been able to not be off
That's
for as
fair.
long as I was, maybe I would have been, you know,
That's fair.
it's a constant reminder, just like,
That's fair. I'll give you that. David, I can't thank you enough for coming back on
such a
to.
violent pivot to end this podcast.
It's not a violent pivot. It's
Fashion,
just
fashion, fashion, doping. Like, really, it's just like
that's awesome. That's fantastic. That's awesome. That was
it's like the
hysterical.
Joker. Like
No, I'm not the
the
Joker.
Joker school of tennis journalism.
Uh,
Speaking of fashion, what do you think of Iga's
icons,
doping?
fashion, doping, Simona Halep yelling.
No, but I'm glad we spent a lot of time talking about fashion because as I said to begin with, this is the gay this is the gay tennis podcast as long as I'm on it. I
Help.
converted him, ladies and
No,
gentlemen.
no, no, no. I will hang up this call right now.
I love your microphone, by the way. I love that it's got the logo.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
For
It's a
the
sticker.
for those, I'm
Would you like?
making sure to
Are
explain to people
you?
who cannot see it.
I'm surprised you haven't worn my shirt on this channel yet.
Didn't I?
Once.
Should I wear it all the time?
Yes. For the brand.
I sleep in it. I'm kidding. I know. It's so tight.
Fucking run away. David, thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to follow David on his social media, DK Tennis on Instagram and Twitter, I believe. Correct?
Yeah, well, technically.
Technically. Is there any?
Oh, and Blue Sky.
Blue Sky?
Yeah, Blue Sky.
What's Blue Sky?
It's like Twitter, but less racist.
What's racist? Okay. X or Instagram, please follow him. David, are there any pieces that we should be looking out for that you're coming out with soon? Or any chats?
Well, I am getting ready. I'm getting ready to go on my first trip of the year. I'm going to be heading to the Middle East in a couple weeks. I'll be going to Dubai, so definitely
be careful out there
because I will be there for the full WTA tournament and for the beginning of the ATP. So hopefully I'll get a lot of really great interviews.
That's awesome.
Yes, with players, and they'll all hopefully be in a really good mood because Dubai is like the home tournament for like half the tennis world at this point.
Because everyone loves tax-free.
It's a great tournament. It really is. It's like the press room is like right off of the center court. So like a player will like win a match, go right off court, immediately do a press conference.
That's awesome.
Like, great vibes. And there's a fantastic cheesecake factory at the Dubai Mall, which I cannot recommend it hard enough. It was just so good. The waiter was so like impressed when he found out I was from the state. He was like,
"Go to Dubai. Go to a cheesecake factory. Yeah. What a life!"
Started as a joke, and now it's real.
Now it's real.
Now it's a thing that I do.
I'm so proud of you. David, thank you again so much for joining us. Make sure to follow him. Make sure you are subscribed to the Tweener Head Tennis YouTube channel. Make sure to check out Your Ball Was Out podcast, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, David.